Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Today, on episode 316, I'm very lucky, privileged to have Jeff Barnes on the podcast. He is a former naval submariner, two-time best-selling author, and he's raised over $1 billion for his clients. Yes, helping entrepreneurs scale and sell for like 8+ figures. Now, how are you today, sir? How are things?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me here, Miwa. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you here. You are an interesting cat, to say the least. Look, this is the thing. You go, oh yeah, two-time best-selling author. Well, whoopee! Like I'm a two-time best-selling. No, I'm not. I have never had the patience to write a book in my life. No, but like Submariner. But like this is the thing. You before the Navy, you were going down a how can I say it? A little bit more exciting. No, that wouldn't be right. More of a sporty line of things.
I sure tried. I sure tried. So growing up, my only ambition in life was to play for the Dodgers. I wanted to be a pitcher. I wanted to go out there and just be on the mound all the time. So that was my only life's ambition until, high school, really. And then unfortunately, circumstances being what they were, we ended up moving to Colorado for a lot of reasons from Southern California. So where you go from playing 12 months out of the year to playing maybe 3 months out of the year,
Mm.
things didn't really work out. My parents were in hard times at that point in our lives, and so it was a little bit challenging. But I tried playing baseball, and I went on an international all-star team my sophomore year of high school, and unfortunately ended up ruining my arm. We played 9 games in 3 days, and my arm just couldn't hold out. And we were training in the middle of winter for Colorado and playing in a tournament in Sydney, Australia at the time. And my arm just couldn't hold out. And unfortunately, I ended up tearing my rotator cuff, top and bottom, and my bicep tendon. So had major surgery when I was 16 years old, and that pretty much put the end to being able to pitch and play ball. And I didn't know what I wanted to do after that. That's for sure.
Yeah, because like when I can imagine, well, to basically play at a major league level, it's not just dedication and focus. It's there is a degree of obsession. Like yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
losing that North Star at such a young age, how like how did you find a new footing, let's say?
It's a great question. I didn't, to be quite honest, I didn't know what I wanted out of life. I had no clue at this point anymore. I was still young, so I thought, oh, well, I'll recover, I'll heal, I'll be just fine. And then I ended up I ended up dislocating my shoulder again playing football. And it was in my senior year I realized there's just no way I'm going to be able to compete in sports. I wanted to, I wanted to be a badass is what I wanted to be when I was a kid, right? You always want to be that tough kid. You want to be the one that's like the superstar, the rock star, or whatever, these dreams of grandeur and ambitions. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. All I knew was I wanted to get out of that town. I didn't want to be what we call a townie, somebody stuck in the town forever. Looking back now, I'm glad I left, but a great place to live. And, just when you're, 17, 18 years old, you just want to go out and see the world and have fun. And
Mm.
so I had no idea what I wanted to do anymore. And one day this guy walks into our school and, dressed in his dress white uniform and offers to buy a pizza for somebody if they want to come in and talk. And I was like, yeah, pizza sounds good. And before you know it, I'm telling him, hey, this sounds great. Put on a great uniform, travel the world for free, get paid to do it. They'll pay for college, they'll pay for this. The girls will love you. Sounds great. Sign me up. So I had to have a conversation with my parents because I wasn't 18 yet. But yeah, I essentially enlisted. I did what's called the delayed entry program. So I enlisted in the military when I was 17 years old. And then I had to wait until I turned 18 and got out of high school to actually join. But yeah, that's how that ended up happening. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be there anymore. I didn't want to be a mechanic the rest of my life. So that's how I ended up in the Navy.
Right? Because like listen to just what you said there. Yeah, I want it to be a badass. And like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, okay, working on as a submariner, operating a nuclear power station effectively underwater, like, yeah, for I don't know how long you guys stay out there, but not for a healthy amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
You could have went down. Okay, to be at that level, I can imagine there was many sort of options open to you if you got like the one you've well done, son. You got these tests on your belt. You got your profession at this. So surely you could have been like, okay, commando, Green Beret, like Navy SEAL. Like if it was like that sort of like when you say badass, so why being a submariner? Just out of interest there.
So great question. I actually did want to. I actually at the time, this is back in the '90s,
Mm,
and you could actually request a pamphlet from the military about joining different programs. And so I actually requested what's called the BUDS program, Basic Underwater Demolition and Seals Program.
yeah.
That's what BUDS stands for. And so I requested it, and they gave you this big little or this big book, kind of like a magazine or a catalog, and it tells you what it's like and it explains as best they can without going into gory detail. But more importantly, they gave you a workout regimen. And so when I was 17 years old, I was trying to figure out the whole workout regimen to become a SEAL because I love swimming, I love the ocean, I love the idea. But the problem was I could not do a pull up or a push up to save my life anymore. My shoulder was so ruined, I couldn't do a pull up, and there's certain physical requirements that you have to do in order to get there. So that's essentially how I ended up going down that path of going into Submariner, and they made me a mechanic, even though that's not what I wanted to be. But it was simply because I could not pass the physical at that stage of my life. I didn't know enough about physical training and how to take care of myself, and I just was doing everything wrong. Essentially, it took me several years to be able to get my shoulder strength back, and then eventually I became a diver. So I had to pass the same PT standards. SEALs are still much higher than a diver, but the people that don't go all the way through the SEAL program, a lot of them do become divers. So I was still able to eventually become a diver, but I never quite got to the SEAL level. They offered me that as I was getting out of the Navy 6 years later, but too little, too late for me at that point.
Ah, too little, too late. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's an interesting thing to say right there. Like, may I ask what happened for you to say too little, too late? Did they?
Yeah, I mean, so many things. At this point, I'd been in the service for 6 years,
Hmm,
and there's a lot of life lessons that I picked up along the way in the military. I was one of those guys that would volunteer for practically everything. I always wanted to try something new, do whatever I could. And so I was in charge of the athletic program when I was in boot camp. I was in charge of my division for a little while. I was in charge of in every unit in the military. They have division leaders and people who are in charge of different, they delegate everything from the earliest age. So here I am, 18. I'm in charge of 300 people, making sure things are getting done. Then I'm in charge of my classes and things like that. And so I'm in charge a lot.
hmm,
They're putting me into these leadership roles, mostly because I asked for it, mostly because I was smart enough to be able to figure it out and have the mental capacity to do that.
hmm,
But and this is in nuclear power school at the time, so we're going through this whole process, and they come up with this new program called the Seaman to Admiral 21, which means in the 21st century, this is the new way to go from enlisted to becoming an officer, and you have to pass these tests. You have to, and I passed all the tests and everything. And the very first, I mean, there was a lot of little things. They degrade you in so many different ways inside the military to kind of break you down and remold you the way they want you to be. But one of the things that really drove me nuts was I qualified in every way, shape, or form for a number of different programs. And yeah, at one point they're like, "Oh, well, we lost your paperwork, so you just reapply next year." I'm like, "But you guys can go print it right now. Listen, kid, I'm busy. Get the hell out of here." That kind of thing. And then there was another time, my best friend and I were both going up for this program. We both qualified for it. We both could have gotten it.
hmm,
And I was the first one qualified in the entire group, and first one through all my programs. And was training as if I was going to be a staff member, and they were going to do what's called staff pickup. And then like, "Oh no, we don't need you." And my buddy ended up getting it. So it's not like they didn't need anyone. They just didn't want me. I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. And they never give you a reason why they pass you up. Now, I can surmise that it's because I volunteered to go be a submariner. And at the time, we needed more submariners in the field, and they just needed people out there. right? But I got passed up for program after program after program. And it wasn't until I was, and even being a diver, I got passed up 4 times to go to dive school. All 4 people ahead of me failed out. And so I was damned if I was going to fail out. So when I finally got to go be a diver, I passed, of course, and the rest is history on that. But it was just, you get passed up enough times without really good explanations as to why. It's a failure of leadership. It's a cultural issue. Sometimes it was because of my attitude. Like I was just dismissive of authority in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Um, because if just like a union, and the military is terrible for this, and a lot of organizations I think are absolutely terrible for this. It's what we call time and rate. If you are in long enough, you earn a certain level of rank or rate, and people are meant to respect you just because you're there. And that just doesn't jive with me, you know. I don't care if you are, full bird captain and you're in charge of everything. If you're a complete asshole to everybody and a total moron, it's really hard for me to respect you, right? So that was one of the issues that I had. And I had an engineer. Let me give you an example of why it was really too little too late. All right. So this is like,
Yeah.
we have this thing called an occupational reactor safeguard examination, or this is what we describe as. So every year, every nuclear power plant in the military is required to go through this type of exam. It's excruciating. It's 3 days long. There's very little sleep. You're running drills. You're testing this. You're pretending like you're breaking something. You got to fix it. And
Mhm.
they're watching you every step of the way. Right. And we had this brand new piece of equipment called a reverse osmosis machine that nobody else in the entire Navy had. And we had to write the procedures for this. So we wrote the procedures for the entire Navy for this. And turns out when you're writing a procedure, you're generally in shore at the dock and you're writing based off of parameters. Well, when you get out to the middle of the ocean, temperature differences change, salinity changes, all these different parameters actually change, which affects how equipment operates, which means the procedures we wrote back in port didn't work when we were out to sea.
Mm.
So we knew this. This is called tribal knowledge. We knew this, but we said, okay, we'll fix that when we get back into port and we'll rewrite everything and we'll go through all the process. But for right now, we all know that. Well, we had a guy who went through and Bobby Bearclaw. I'll never forget this guy. This is his nickname is Bobby Bearclaw.
That's a good name.
And and so this guy, I'm required to watch him because I'm the supervisor, I'm the leading petty officer, he's my underling. I'm required to watch him and grade him, and he does it all. He does it right by our tribal standards and gets the equipment running.
Yeah.
He does it wrong based off of what's written on the paperwork because the paperwork we hadn't updated yet. They came unglued. They had a shit fit about this, right? They said, you can't do things like that. You guys can't operate like that. You have to operate by the letter of the law, the way the procedure written. We're like, but we wrote the procedure, right? We reserve the right to modify it, kind of thing. And they didn't like that. So we had an engineer on the boat. Once all the brass left and they were out, the guys were done giving us the grade. They gave us an average, right? So it means we just got an average as our score. They don't get you A, B, C, D, F. It was just an average. And the engineer at the time, he was about 5'2".
Mm.
He had what we call Napoleon syndrome, and he had a belt buckle. And on his belt buckle, we thought it was a joke. We engraved Prince of Darkness, and we gave that to him, and he wore that thing around proudly. All right, this is
He's like, come on now. If someone's
I'm dead serious.
yeah,
He
no,
wore dead serious, and so when those other guys left, he brings me into his office with my replacement because I'm about 6 weeks from getting out of the Navy at this point.
yeah.
He brings me into his office and he dresses me up one side, down another, just like the most verbal tongue lashing you could possibly imagine, because I couldn't manage to get my division in line so that we could actually get an excellent on our grade or things like that.
Mm.
And it's humiliating, it's embarrassing. It's like, I'm sorry. What can I do about it, sir? But no compassion, no understanding, nothing like that. It's just like complete, just belligerent being a jerk for no great reason other than we didn't do as good as we should have, which I agree we should have done better, but there's not much I could do about it at that point. Okay. So that was right after we left Hawaii. We're going from Hawaii to San Diego,
Yeah.
which is about a week in travel. That's about it. As soon as we got into San Diego, I'm off the boat. I'm gone. I am going on terminal leave and I'm not coming back. Right. So he gives me this tongue lashing. And then like 4 or 5 days later, he's sitting there trying to sweet talk me to try and get me to stay in, to re-enlist. I'll make you a SEAL. I'll sign the paperwork today. We really need you. You're like one of the best and the brightest we have. And I'm like, it's just really, really hard to take you seriously, to believe you, to trust anything you say when you're so two-faced and this is the way you treat people. So that's kind of what the experience was for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, whew, no, that is definitely a hard spot to be in because, like, one, like, yeah, you see, like, you quite clearly are just looking at your sort of LinkedIn profile. You are a person who rather puts themselves in a place of discomfort to sort of like grow as much as you can. You don't sort of like shun away for responsibility. But like, did you actually understand at the time how much of a sort of meritocracy driven person you were rather than, paint by
Not
number?
really. It's a great question. And the answer is not really. I just knew that things didn't feel right.
Mm,
Um, and so I learned over time that there were certain people that I just really graded with. I did not work well with them.
mm,
And the more I grew in my career and I went through training and coaching and leadership development, things like this, what I realized was that I didn't care about rate or rank. I cared about, merits for a good is a good way of putting it. But really someone's capability, motivation, their desire to succeed, it was their attitude more than anything else. I had plenty of other very compassionate people in the military who were superiors to me that even though they were total jerks in some cases,
mm-hmm.
it was justified and they explained themselves. And when it came across, you knew why they were acting the way they did, right? It wasn't like I'm just being a jerk to be a jerk, right? Or you deal with people, I don't know, I think almost everybody can relate to this, like the movie Office Space, right? You have the guy that's, yeah, I'm going to need you to come in on Saturday. Oh, I need you to work late. Oh, I need you to do things my way. Why? Well, just because I said so, right? Like that doesn't work for most people. That's not a good way to get people motivated to do anything. And I learned relatively early in my life, in my early 20s, that I can't be around those types of people. I can't take orders from them because I don't respect them simply because of their position. I will respect somebody even if they work for me, if they've earned that respect. I'll respect anybody above me as long as, again, they earn my respect. But a lot of people don't take the time to really try and earn that respect. They feel like they got this little badge on their chest, and because they have the badge, that's enough. And you should just do whatever they say because that's like, no, that doesn't work for me. So I was one of those guys that didn't really fit in too well in the military's um, structure in that way because it's a lot of people still felt like it's do as I say, not as I do,
Yeah.
and doesn't matter what I say, just do it anyway. I'm like, that doesn't fly for me.
Mm. Now that like this is the thing, like sort of military structures and like yeah, people trying to fit into that and sort of basically grow, develop, or just find their new footing is some, as you've just like said with your story, can be very difficult. But like yeah, when you left the military, it's like you started working with like kids who were obese. If so, like this is the thing, like going from that sort of rigid structure to now a group of kids which, you know what I mean, like hard work and discipline might not be their foremost tenants, if you get what I mean.
Mhm.
Like, did you find yourself like falling into the sort of military mindset, or was this sort of the first steps of finding out who you are, what type of leader you are today?
Another great question. So yes and no, right? I think that leadership is something that you're always developing and working on because the people around you are always changing and the tools and the strategies might change from time to time. What I found with kids was
Yeah.
it was really not the kids' fault. Almost 100% of the time, it's not the kids' fault. It's the parents. The parents have poor training or poor leadership in their own households. And so me, like, let's face it, I sat on the board of this nonprofit called Life School, Go Adventure. It was like taking these middle school age kids out on adventures in the wilderness for a week, two at a time, and teaching them these skills that they could really use throughout life. And these are a lot of the times inner city kids. who their parents are working two jobs. They almost never see their parents. They either walk to school in an inner city, they're taking a bus. Like, these are the kids that society just, kind of assumes, okay, they'll figure it out eventually, but we're not really going to be focusing on them. So it was really cool when our group would get together. And so I didn't work with the kids directly at this point. I sat on the board, and so we worked with the leadership team. And one of the biggest challenges we always had was, well, we get these kids for like a week to 2 weeks at a time
Hmm.
total. Some kids might opt to come back next year, but how are you going to change a child's entire perspective on health and their outlook on life and their motivation and all of that so that it's actually going to have a lasting impact? Now, I will say we did a pretty good job of that, but if they still go back home to a really crappy situation, there's only so much the kid can do, right? The kid's not in control of their lives. So, what I ended up doing a lot of the time was working with parents and trying to really help parents. And I still do this to this day. There's three pillars in my life that I look at, which is health, wealth, and education. And so education is one of the cornerstones. And I'm always learning, constantly learning about health and wellness and things like that. And then I'm sharing things with them wherever I can. And I'm not a personal trainer. My wife has been a personal trainer and a physique competitor in the past. And so I'd say we have a really good foundation when it comes to health. And so we try to teach the people and help the people who want to learn. But that's another thing I learned is that a lot of people are not motivated. A lot of people are not motivated to change their habits, change their outlook, change their beliefs until something really, really bad happens. And then like you have a heart attack. It's like, oh my God, and it's a wake up call. Well, geez, that's 60 years too late for some people. But sometimes it does take things like that for them to change. But for me, it was how do we communicate this? And we started learning about telling stories and analogies. And for the kids in those camps, the beautiful thing was that they were not ever entitled. They all came in on the level playing field and they had to work together. And it's like, okay, guess what, guys? Dinner's happening at 6 p.m. and no one is helping you create it and cook it. So if you guys are ready to eat at 6 p.m. or you guys want to eat at 6 p.m., you better figure it out. And kids are really ingenious with this. Kids will actually say, okay, well, it's a shock at first, right? Like, what do you mean? Mom and dad or counselors aren't going to cook us food? And oh, by the way, where's the kitchen? There's no running water. And like all these fears bubble up really quickly because this is a completely new situation for them. And so the first time you're kind of helping them out a little bit, but by the end of their time there, the kids were taking care of everything and they figured it out. And so that what this did is it changed their outlook on life, realizing I can do this. Given the right circumstances, given the right situation, given the right training, almost anybody can do those things and make those changes. But we can't coddle them into helping them get there, right? We have to put them in a situation where they're forced to learn. And so that was the cool thing about working with these kids at this camp. And these weren't camps, I shouldn't say that. Like a camp, like my sixth grader son just went to a camp where they all stayed in giant cabins. Like, no, this was roughing it, hiking, backpacking in the woods, and sleeping under the stars kind of thing. And so it was really great experiences for a lot of these kids. And then hopefully they take some of that back to their parents, and their parents get excited about it, or their parents see a change in them and want to encourage that.
No, it's tricky with kids on that side of things. Their book, The Coddling of the American Mind, like
It's just a great book, absolutely great book.
yeah, because like this, like even though it's like just obese kids and like sort of changing, like trying to change their lives, there was a chapter in the book where it talked about soldiers in Vietnam who were like doing heroin and everything like this, and they thought we're gonna have an epidemic of people doing heroin, but as soon as they came back to like the States, it that aspect of behavior just dropped away like that. It wasn't even an
Mhm.
issue. It's harder, especially when you've got kids. Yeah, you might give them the tools and everything like this, but they're going back into the environment which fostered their sort of situation in the first place, and trying to overcome that is a
That's
challenge
hard.
path. Yeah, I can
It
only.
is, it's the biggest reason that you have multi-generational poverty,
Mm,
right? It because you, me, anybody else out there it doesn't matter where you come from. If you change your environment and you replace your really crappy environment with a better environment, you will eventually adapt to that environment. You're not going to bring all of your terrible habits over. You'll bring some, and
Mm,
you'll try to bring all of them, but the environment itself is going to force you to change because you are now the outcast. And if you want to fit in with that society, you're going to start changing. So the number one thing that I would suggest to anybody, maybe you had a really terrible upbringing, you had a terrible lifestyle growing up. Maybe, gosh, I remember the first time I saw a fat baby, and not like a chubby baby, not like, cute baby, but I'm talking like a 3 or 4 year old kid
oh,
that looked like he was going to die of diabetes anytime soon. I mean, I was a lifeguard as a teenager, and I just remember thinking, what in the world is happening? This does not make any sense.
mm,
And, you know, the baby doesn't have any control over that. That's 100% parents. Some cases, people want to blame it all on, some sort of medical deficiency. That can happen, right? It's the exception, not the norm, right? Um, but the fact is that once I'll give you a really good example. This gal that I was friends with in high school, she was heavy set in high school,
mhm,
and just didn't really care. And it's like whatever, everybody still liked her, but she was heavy set. And I saw her several years after high school, and she was drop dead gorgeous, absolutely stunning. I didn't even recognize her. And it's like, Jen? Like that? Yeah, that's Jen. Holy crap. And what happened? She changed her environment. She went away from her home, away from her family, away from the people that were kind of creating this environment, got into a whole new place, and as a result, transformed her life.
mm,
And so I'd say anybody who wants to transform, you have to be the one that's going to make that happen. And if you have kids, it's 100% incumbent upon you as the parent to put the right environment in place if you want to have your kids grow up healthy and with a great outlook on life.
yeah, no, I agree. Like, this is the thing. People don't like realize this. The way you can improve your life, the easiest way is sometimes just to move. Just
Mm-hmm.
just do that. Move. And as you say, they adapt to the environment. But it's a case of, yeah, whatever sort of baggage they carry around in that neighborhood, whatever that like people's judgments of them in their sort of that community,
Mm-hmm.
you can like drop that, and like the people might look at their social media and go, but wasn't that you? I was like, yeah, there was that, yes, that was me, but it's not who I truly am. Like, yeah, I'm going to grow, I'm going to develop, and yeah, move swiftly forward, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's why podcasts are so great too, right? It used to be if you ever wanted to escape your own environment, your own narrative, you'd get into a book, right?
Yes.
And hopefully your kid, if you're a kid, you're in the library and you're learning stuff. And that's how you could really foster that growth, that mindset growth. And now, man, kids have access to so many things, adults have access to so many things. And that's why podcasts are great. Like you and I are what, like 8, 9 time zones apart right now, something like that.
Like, yeah, we are a considerable distance. I'm going to say, ooh, 6,000 miles, maybe six and a half
Yeah.
thousand miles away from you.
Exactly. Here we are speaking, live stream, talking directly to each other. And well, I know I've never been to your town because the only time I ever spent any time in the UK was when I flew into London Heathrow on my way to Dubai or to Bahrain. But the fact is, previously, the only way people like us would have ever gotten connected is through extensive travel, right? It's not easy to get from where you live to where I live. And it's not easy for, or maybe I could read a book, and I could read a book about somebody from somebody over there. But
Yeah.
again, now you have this opportunity where we can break down all of those geographical barriers, all the time barriers, and I can get educated by you. You can get educated by somebody in South America and so on, right? So anybody who is stuck in a rut, I hate to be the guy that says this to some people, but they choose that, right? Because I can pull out my phone, I can go to a computer, I can go to any sort of library, if you have a library anywhere nearby, and I can plug in and I can go learn and I can sit at the feet of the masters, right? Like MIT started putting their courses online for free. So
Mm.
somebody that wants to go learn engineering from MIT, one of the most prestigious universities in the world when it comes to technology, they can do that practically for free, right? So anyone who is stuck in a rut or stuck in a really terrible situation, generally they're choosing that. And maybe they're choosing it out of fear. fear of the unknown, fear of change, whatever, but they are choosing it.
Mm. No, like this is the thing. Yeah, you're right. There is so much information at our fingertips, and like there are like yeah, if there's a million and one things, if we choose to go down one path, the other with regards to the amount of information, knowledge out there, yeah, we could be significantly better people. You know what I mean? They're like out there in this world. You mentioned podcasting. I'm doing this podcast. Look, they say there is 2 million or like 2 to 4 million active podcasts. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's not. That's not true. There's about maybe a million, maybe 2 million podcasts which are live and active. I mean, when I say live and active, they've had at least 5 episodes come out in the year. But apart from that, people like go, I'm going to do a podcast. Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Lot more work than a lot of people think. That's for sure.
Yeah, they do their first episode. They're like, okay, it's awesome. They do their third episode. Okay, it's awesome. Well, maybe not as awesome as I thought it was. They do five, and it's like, hey, and they stop. They
Mm-hmm.
like if they did 21 episodes, they'll be like ranked quite highly in podcasts in the world. They might
Mm-hmm.
not have much of an audience, but they would be. But it's one of those things where people don't like when they do podcasts or do any endeavor in life, they sometimes fail to see, like, they focus on the goal, but they don't actually think about the lessons, the journey along the way, what they can pick up and how they can grow and develop. And this is why I'm grateful for podcasts here and there and everywhere. But most people, they quite happily will be distracted. They will
Mm-hmm.
doom scroll. They will yeah, like there is a myriad of things which you can use as an excuse. And yeah, it's an active choice of apathy which kicks in. And that's one of those things which is hard to get over. And look, I don't get me wrong. Look, I've got a 1 year old tearing around, like chasing after her, like and trying to do everything in a day. There are many a times where I want to just sit down, curl up in the ball, and sleep. But no good will come from it, apart from
Yeah.
a little bit of extra rest, you know?
Oh, I totally understand. So when I was going through, I went through school. I got my MBA. I was doing night classes, and I was helping my ex at the time get her business going, and I was also working and things like that. And then we tried having babies, and luckily, our first one came along in 2012 after I finished my MBA. So I didn't have my MBA and baby and all that stuff, 'cause that's a lot to manage. But yeah, when you're trying to manage, you know, anything, and then you throw a little kid into it, oh my gosh, right? They don't care what your timeline looks like at all. Last thing on their minds.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Like, yeah, I want like put it this way: if a police car came into the street I'm living in and they saw the way I had to sometimes like go out to go for a run early in the morning, they're like, "Oh, wait, what's going on here? Baby inside. Shh."
Yeah.
Like,
Be quiet. Yeah,
it's
they'd
like,
get
yeah.
it. They'd get
It's
it.
like, okay. But yeah, no, it does have an impact. Like with regards to studying for your MBA, you said you studied at night because yeah, there are many ways to get your MBA, but studying at night, were you working one job, two jobs? How was that going with
I
everything?
was it was challenging to say the least. So I had the GI Bill, which was nice. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I was getting my leadership MBA from the University of Washington. We had classes 2 nights a week, 4 hours at a time. So from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., 2 nights a week. We would generally do study groups either before or after classes, and then every single weekend. And then on top of that, I had my job. And so I traveled. I was a supervisor for this company. And so I traveled. I was doing at that time 40,000 miles a year in the air, give or take. So I
Oh,
was on an airplane. And this was right around the time that that movie Up in the Air came out with George Clooney. And some of my friends would make jokes because, I don't even think Zoom was around yet at that point because I was in 2010. And, here I am trying to do calls on Skype and trying to figure out how to use gosh, what was it? It wasn't WebEx because we weren't Cisco, but something like that.
was it a
And
Google thing or something like that?
Google Hangouts was
Go meet.
terrible at the time. The technology for doing live streams and things like that was really, really hard. So I ended up doing a lot of work every weekend. I was, family go and do their things without me, and that's just the way it was, right? And studying on the road and listening to as many things as I could. And you're getting these giant fat textbooks that you have to read on statistics or blue ocean strategies or whatever it might be,
Mm.
and trying to do all that, and then trying to do these group classes and group projects together and capstone projects. Man, it was just a lot of work, right? And so for a couple of years, I would sleep maybe 5, 6 hours a night at best, and then I'd work as much as I could during the day, and then try and be a husband when I came home, and all of that. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine because like this is the thing. What people don't realize when you go, oh, I was flying for work, doing this, that, the other. That everyone thinks it's this glamorous lifestyle. You get to see this, you get to see that. I did it for a period of time, and I just went. It's rock star traveling. What do
Hmm.
you mean? You fly in, you go to wherever
Do
you
your
have
thing.
in conference, whatever. Then you go either back to the airport and you fly back, or you go to a hotel, you stay in the hotel to then basically go to the airport to fly all over the place, then to come back to that hotel and then fly back home.
Yeah.
You see nothing. It's like you,
Yeah. No, people don't get it at all. Business travel, the best thing about business travel is racking up the miles and the points so that you could eventually take a vacation for free. Like that's really cool
mm,
when you can do that. But as far as business travel go, it's definitely not glamorous. I mean, yeah, okay. So I have all my proper security checks and things like that. So I can go from the curb to the gate in like 5, 10, 15 minutes tops. So I
mm.
don't have to worry about security anymore. And I have the whole system mapped out and figured out. I know where I'm going. I know where I like to eat. If you get in the clubs, you can stay in the clubs and while you're waiting for your flight or whatever and get a drink. Yeah, okay, that sounds cool. Right. Until you do it every single week for 3 years straight. Right. Like when you're in an airport and they know you by name at the Delta Lounge or something like that, or certain people at the hotels that you're going and visiting out of state know who you are. That's when you start to. I had this guy. So I live in the Seattle area, and
Huh? Uh-uh. Ooh, one moment. Jeff. Come on. Come back. Come back to me. Oh, Jeff.
there you are.
Yeah,
Did I freeze or did you?
that was no, it I think it crashed on my side. Yeah,
Okay.
like you said, you were living in the Seattle area.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know if it got all that, but essentially what was happening was I live in the Seattle area. Portland's about 3.5 hours south for me. And I'd have to go down there roughly once a month, a couple times a month sometimes to deal with employees, deal with the government and these types of things. And so I'm going down there and I'd stay at the same hotel every time and I'd go to the same place for dinner because I love this little restaurant called El Gaucho. And so I'm staying down the Pearl District. I'd go to the hotel, check in, go across the street to El Gaucho for the late night happy hour because you don't even get back to the hotel until late and you're exhausted,
Mm.
but like I still want to eat something. So I'd go there and the bartender remembered my name. So as soon as I'd walk in the door, hey Jeff, you want the usual? And sure enough, it's like, gosh, you just shouldn't know. You shouldn't know my name. I'm really happy that you do. It's great customer service. That's one of the reasons I went there. But
Yeah.
the fact that a guy that I go and I visit maybe once or so a month, like that's pretty frequent for somebody that you have to either take a flight or travel several hours to go see, right? So it was stuff like that that got to be quite a bit. And at the height of my travel times, I was doing 75,000 plus miles per year. I was staying in hotels all over the country. I was racking up the miles and things like that. And it was, like I said, it would be fun if you could ever take a vacation, but there was no such thing. There's no such thing as taking a vacation when you already work remote because you go someplace and somebody checks in, they need to call you. It's not like the old days where you could just like close everything off, leave the office and boogie out, right? I still get text messages from employees or people that need help on something. So I never fully disconnect, but it's not as glamorous as a lot of people think, that's for sure.
Mm. Like what I've got to say, like that type of like that sort of lifestyle must build a different kind of resilience uh than I would say even your time in the military. Would I be right in saying that?
I don't know if resilience is the right word, but maybe. It definitely builds in a certain type of character, that's
Mm.
for sure. And you learn to deal with all sorts of unexpected things. I remember one time I got promoted and I had to go down and visit my boss and get my performance review. My very first performance review in this position. I was like, great, I'm going to go visit her. She's in San Francisco area. I'm late to get to the airport because there's this massive pile up on the freeway, so I can't even get to the airport on time. And normally, you park off a lot and then you get a shuttle because it's cheaper. And this time, I'm like, forget it. I'm just parking at the airport. I'm parking on the premium level, so I don't even have to go up and down stairs. I'm going to run in. I run all the way through everything. I don't even have a checked bag. I just have my backpack. And I get through security as fast as I can. And I get to the gate right after they close the gate, right? Like,
Mm.
sorry, gate's closed. I'm like, oh, and they would not open it back up. I'm like, well, it's pretty important. And it's way before, it's like 6 in the morning, right? So it's not like I can call my boss up and say, hey, I missed my flight. I'll see you some other time. This is my performance review. We've had this plan for a while. I've got to get this thing done. I better. So I go and I book another flight on Virgin and I get down there, but I'm a little bit late. But I called her and left a message at her office and say, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. Here's what happened. Really apologize and so on. This is talk about learning on the fly. So this is my first year as a supervisor in this job. And the night before, I had a guy that said, hey, Jeff, I need to change my flight because I have this inspection I got to do. Can I
Mm.
get permission to fly into this city instead and get a rental car instead of flying all the way there and going home? So yeah, that's totally fine. Go for it. We land in Oakland and they say on the overhead, can everybody please stay seated? We need to have the sheriff come on board. And so the sheriff comes on. They're like, well, will Mr. Jeff Barnes please ring your call button?
Oh
Like, what
no.
the hell? So sure enough, I ring my call button, and these two big burly sheriff come down, and they're like, "Sir, grab your stuff. Let's go. Let's get off the plane." I'm like, what's this all about? Like, just step off the plane, please. Like, what in the world? So sure enough, so now I'm not only am I already late to my own performance review, but now I'm being drug off the plane by these sheriffs, and they're nice about it. They're
Okay.
taking me off the plane, and they're like, "Where's your luggage?" It's like, I'm only here for the day, so I've only got this one thing.
Oh no.
And they take me off and they just take everything out of my bag right in front of everybody, right? I'm right there and they got their dog, they got everything, they're checking all my stuff out. I'm like, can you guys tell me like what's going on here? Like, no, we can't. Like, what in the world is happening here? And this is in 2010-ish.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and so, there's everybody's still kind of on high alert and everything like that. And sure enough, these guys look through everything. They're like, okay, they call it in. They're like, all right, you're free to go. And I told somebody else about the story later who was in TSA and law enforcement. Like, oh yeah, it's because you booked a very last minute one way ticket down. So that's a huge red flag. I'm like, well, they probably should have checked that before I got on the flight. That's okay. Um, so anyway, this happens. In the meantime, I have like 20 missed calls. And I don't know what's going on, but my phone's just like blowing up and I have all these voicemails. And so I listen to my voicemail. Now I'm texting my boss, hey, I had a delay at the airport. I'm on the way. I'm getting on the train. I'm going to be over there as soon as I possibly can. Now I'm already like 2, 3 hours late. This is ridiculous. And I get these text messages from the guy that I told the night before that he could get a rental car. So I get on with him and I find out he'd gotten the rental car. And on his travel over, this is in the wintertime,
Oh no.
he sees a cow in the middle of the road. He swerves to miss the cow. He goes in the ditch and rolls his car and just completely totals the car. And I'm worried for him. Like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. I was buckled in. Everything's fine. Car is completely totaled.
Oh no.
Like, oh, geez. Okay, well, and this is one of my employees. And so now I'm going for my performance review. Now I'm late. I've been taken off the plane by the sheriff. And I've got an employee who crashed in a rental car and destroyed a rental car on private property. Like none of this is good, right? This is me going in for my performance review. I'm like, well, this will be an interesting kind of performance review. Then to put the icing on the cake, we find out that the car rental agency he rented the car from was no longer approved by our company. And so we didn't have an insurance policy with them. and he opted not for the insurance policy because
Oh,
he thought that it was one of our corporate things. It's like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm dealing with. So, needless to say, my boss and I never even got to my performance review. We were busy putting out fires all day long, and it was just a nightmare, right? But yeah, so it builds a type of character in you that you didn't know you had in you before, because you never know what you're going to expect when you're traveling that much and dealing with remote employees all over the country. That's for sure.
because like you have been like okay, like yeah, we live in the world where hybrid work is like commonplace now. Now, well,
Hmm.
thank you 2020. It like 2020 basically sped everything up
Yeah,
like 5, maybe 10 years. But yeah,
yeah.
like to work remotely when it was not commonplace, that is that is a weird world to be in. Like, how did you sort of like build connections with regards to your team back then compared to now, where it must be?
Well, now it's Zoom calls, right? Now
Yeah,
you're on Zoom calls and all this sort of stuff. We didn't do that back then. But I would do a webinar about every week, every 2 weeks with my team for training, just so they can get to know me. Because I had 25 employees, most of them twice my age. One guy was actually 3 times my age at that point. He was in his 70s.
yeah,
Um, and so, like, just getting them onto a webinar, and again, it was some sort of Microsoft Office product at that point. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't Teams. Teams is new, but it was a nightmare trying to get people. So I was on the phone literally all day, every day, talking to people. And so
mm,
you're building up rapport just by getting to know them and talk. And man, when you are a manager, especially when you're a manager of middle to late aged males. I don't know what it is about this. I've never had this issue with women as much. Like, women will tell you things. They will tell you all sorts of stuff that you didn't ask them to tell you, right? You will learn about surgeries and problems and health issues and financial issues and kid issues. And oh man, you learn all this sort of stuff. So the way you build rapport is just communication, right? You build that up. But then I would have to go visit my employees regularly. So I live in Washington State. The folks that are in Washington, I see a little bit more frequently. The guy that lives in Alaska or Montana or Colorado, maybe not as much, but at least a couple times a year. And then generally once a year, or upwards of a couple times a year, we'd have these big group meetings so they could all get together with each other as well and not feel like they're completely disconnected. But yeah, you're just talking to people all the time. That's why I was traveling. I was traveling to go meet my team. I was traveling to meet customers and clients and other people and other employees in our company. So that's why I travel, because that's the only way that you really build up that network when you're remote.
yeah. No, like one thing I would say with regards to like guys as they get older, that they use you this sort of conduit to talk about many a thing. Like it's one of the how can I put it? Like as time goes by, you know how it is. Like, yeah, like I've said this a number of times. When you're in your sort of late teens, your 20s, you're like, yeah, we're all gonna go out. Who's with me? We are Legion. And you just turn and you're ah. By the time
Yep.
you sort of get into your late 20s, early 30s, you go, yes, we're gonna go out. We are Legion. Turn and it's like it's not as loud and like yeah, get into your late 30s, your early 40s, like, yes, we are Legion. No, I wear crack unit. And yeah. So, like, there is always this, I would say, there is a bit of a thirst for guys because, especially in this day and age, where those connections are not as strong, to have these conversations to like it's like the conversation's needed, but it's not like you must go off to have therapy. That's where I
Yeah.
think guys get that. So you being connected but not connected, it's easier for them to talk to you about a number of random things. I would imagine a number of random.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, unsolicited conversations. I had employees whose significant other committed suicide or attempted to commit suicide right in front of them. I had employees whose children were going through life-threatening situations. I've had employees whose kids who got arrested and got put in jail, and all of a sudden they are now raising grandchildren. I had, divorces and births and deaths and so when you are a manager, I think it's one of those things that no one really tells you about. Like that's not in the HR training manual for any company. That's not in the corporate prospectus of what to expect when you take on this job. No one talks about that. But it's necessary, especially I think it is especially with guys, because girls, and I can't speak as though I'm the expert, but I feel like they are much better at getting together with their little groups and talking about their things amongst each other, right? When it comes to men, we really love what we do. We love our work. And so the people who are doing the work with us, we generally have some sort of kindred spirit with them and the camaraderie. So I'll tell you, like the guys that I was in the Navy with, I'm still best buddies with them. And we went down to San Diego earlier this year and we went drinking and having a good time and hanging out and,
Fantastic.
talking trash to each other and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, that's something you build up and it's because of going through similar things together.
Mm, yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Because like this is the thing. Like, okay, yeah, it's one of those things, as you say, they don't mention in like when you become a manager. But with all of that sort of information, all of that, like, you know what I mean, weight coming towards you, how did you manage to deal with it? Because there's only so much I would say people can go, yes, that's in that little box there, and that's in that little box there. How did you manage to like, yeah, handle all of that?
Well, I mean, you take it day by day, but it's a question I get asked actually a lot by a number of different people, and I gotta say, there's a lot of people out there that think guys are like really, really simple, like we're really simple minded, and that we don't think about stuff. And the fact is, there are times where we don't think about anything because that's our box in our brains, which is like decompression, right? We literally might be working out, we might be just listening to music, we might be just driving, we might be, for me it became driving and mowing the grass. I used to hate yard work all the time. I could not stand yard work. But all of a sudden I realized, man, when I mow the grass, no one bothers me. No one's going to come up to me and talk to me about this. I can't hear the phone ring. There's no TV going on. Like no, and the wife is happy because the grass is getting mowed and the yard work's getting done. And so all of a sudden it was me getting and I'm in my hands are getting dirty. I'm in touch with nature. Like all these different things are happening, and it's a way for me to kind of decompress.
Mm,
And sometimes I am thinking about, okay, what did that conversation mean? What was that person saying? How can I help? And but if you don't have some sort of outlet and you're constantly like as an entrepreneur, I was having this conversation with my wife this morning. Like, geez, I woke up at 5 o'clock this morning with all these different things on my mind about work. Got to get out of that. Got to be able to put that away. And so I'll do things from time to time to help with that. But as far as like other people's baggage, right? Let's just be honest. That's sometimes what it is, just baggage. You have to see it for what it is. Sometimes they just want to talk to somebody. It doesn't mean you need to take it on. They just need to get it out. So sometimes you just need to be there and they feel like they're having the conversation. And that's totally fine. You're not making it my problem. It's not like I'm going to go fix this. I feel terrible for you. It sucks that you're going through this, but it's not my problem.
mm,
Now, if you need help with something, if you're, and if I'm the manager, if I'm the boss, right, then yes, I need to be here to help you if that is something you're going through. And so there's a level of compassion that you absolutely have to have. So you have to be very good at deciphering and reading between the lines. Are they asking for my help or do I just need to be here? And a lot of, especially guys, unfortunately, we like to fix things, right? So somebody tells us a problem. It's like, we want to fix these things. My wife keeps reminding me, I don't need you to fix shit. I just need you to listen. Say, okay, I'm here and I will listen. But it gets awkward, right? When you have that conversation, you know that she's just venting or somebody's saying something, and they get to the end and they kind of look at you, say, okay, are you looking at me just so I can acknowledge that I heard what you said? Or do you want me to reply? I'm not sure yet. With women, it's a lot harder, right? We don't necessarily know if we're supposed to say anything or not. With guys, it's pretty straightforward. You get to the end of the conversation, they're like, all right, man, well, I got to get back to it. So thanks for listening. Thanks for talking. I'll talk to you later. Right. Like that's the end of the conversation with a guy. With a girl, it's like she's waiting for something. It's like, oh man, there's like 100 different choices here and probably none of them are right, but which one's less wrong?
mm. Well, like put it this way, that's why I call the hurt locker position. No, you never know what might hit from. So you got to be careful. There's like, okay. Yeah, no, because yes, as you say, it is a natural reaction because it's like, okay, give me all of this. And it's like, yeah, you get kind of like it might be a very bad problem or anything like this, but nevertheless, there's a little bit of like for me, there's always a little bit of enthusiasm because it's like, wait, you mean I get some you I can try fixing something?
Mhm. Yeah.
I go, yeah, okay. So I've got to temper that as well. I think sometimes I just have to ask. It's like, okay, do you want to just talk about it, or do you want me
Yeah.
to like throw in a suggestion? If
Sometimes you need to ask that question. Yeah,
yeah,
just to be clear. Yeah, absolutely.
no,
Absolutely.
no, I have to ask. With all of the things you do, because you seem like, how can I say, a low activity guy. It's like, yeah, it's like, yeah. Now, what possessed you to write a book? Which book came first? Was it All Hands on Deck or Self Direction?
It was the ultimate guide to self-directed investing and retirement planning. And I came up with that idea because a former business partner and I were in the business of real estate investing and developments and buying properties. And this is
Yeah,
right after the financial crisis. And
great.
so, yeah, everything went down. We thought everything would be great. We're going to go ahead and start buying some properties and doing development.
Mm,
And we said, okay, well, banks aren't going to loan us the money. We need to go out there and we need to raise money from individuals, which we both knew how to do. Obviously, we've gotten a lot better since then, but we both understood how to do this. And what we said is, where is the most money that people would be willing to invest? Well, it's in accounts that have really, really terrible returns right now because the stock market's in the trash. The real estate market is in the trash. Everything's going terrible in the world right now. And maybe these people would like to get some sort of stable return with an asset-backed security. And we said most of that money is inside of people's retirement plans. And I'd known about self-directed IRAs for a while, but not everybody else did. And there was a new thing, relatively new. It wasn't actually new. It was just kind of a way we phrase it, which is a self-directed 401k plan. So if you were a small business owner, or even if you had an IRA, well, there was at that time it was like $13 trillion in assets inside of people's IRA plans. Okay, they were all making like nothing, and a lot of them were losing money. And so we said, okay, well, how do we position ourselves as the go-to experts to help people understand that they can take their IRA money and put it into real estate? And so that's where the book came from. So we wrote the ins and outs of the book, put that whole thing together, use that as a lead generation tool. And so I would just give the book away for free at speeches, at events, and we would tell people, hey, if you want to buy it, just pay shipping and handling. And then we'd give them the book, and then that book would turn into a phone conversation. The conversation would then turn into setting up a self-directed retirement plan, and then the self-directed retirement plan would turn into an investment into a deal of ours or property. And
mm,
so it was reasonably successful. We did about $5 million into one project alone, and we had another 20 or 30 projects that we were working on at a time. Unfortunately, my business partner and I at that point didn't see eye to eye, so I ended up leaving the business, and saying, okay, this wasn't a good fit for me anymore. So I'm just going to take my assets and leave. And
mm.
he continued running it for a little while.
Yeah. Like that. Wow. 5 million. Jeez. How long did it take you to get to 5 million?
Oh, and that one, that was about 3 months, 4 months that it took us to raise the 5 million. Yeah.
It's not like the way like the way you replied just then. It was just like, oh god damn. You were like, oh, that one? And there's like about 3 months. It's like, yeah, it's like, fair enough.
Once you know the process, it's just like anything else, right? Once you know the process and you become the expert at the process, it's just a matter of working that process, right?
Mm,
And there's guys and gals out there right now that they could make a phone call and raise $100 million in the next 72 hours. And I know because I know those people. I had one guy that when we were doing stuff like this for startups and inside of our big company,
yeah.
he told me flat out, he goes, if you find me a company that can get us a decent 4% return, I'll get you a $50 million check tomorrow. And I said, well, we're working with startups. We're not talking about $4 million or 4% rates of return, right? So he said, it's got to be risk averse. I've got to have bonds and insurance on it. And I've got to be able to show it to the management. But yeah, we can do $50 million wire. I said, and it's because he worked in the capital markets and that's what they did.
Yeah.
That's how they made their money.
It's one of those things. Okay, the sort of the mental leap from where you were, say, basically coming out of the military, doing the MBA, to now what you are now. Like going,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, oh, 5 million in a few months. Yeah, that's not difficult. Like, does it sometimes like when you sort of think about it, do you ever think about it and go, that is kind of trippy, or is it just so ingrained now?
It's completely ingrained. I look at it and go, well, that should have had another zero or two zeros on the back of it, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. But let me give you an example of why that is. So I already told you about my arm and not being able to play baseball, and
Yeah.
then I wanted to be a SEAL, and that wasn't going to work out. And all that stuff builds character, right? Like over time, all these little things build character in us. And you mentioned the very beginning of our podcast here was, I like to just kind of take things on, put myself in situations where I'll grow.
Mm,
And sometimes that's by design, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's completely accidental. And one of the times it was by design is when I went out to be a scuba diver, and they literally put you at the bottom of the pool and tell you the only way you fail and get kicked out of here is if you try to shoot to the surface. You're not allowed to do that. So one thing you are not allowed to do. Everything else we can forgive. If you try to get to the surface when we do this stuff to you, you fail. Instant failure. And so they put you at the bottom of the pool. It's only 12, 15 feet deep, but they rip your mask off. They rip your fins off. They rip your regulator out of your mouth. They turn off your air. They turn off everything. They disorient you. They're doing all this sort of stuff. And we called it shark hits. And so it's designed to mimic if you were out there in the ocean and you're working underwater and something goes wrong.
mm,
Can you think when you can't breathe and you're underwater? Because if you shoot to the surface, you could very easily die. And we don't want that. So you need to be able to think under extreme duress. And when you go through that enough, you realize, okay, I can handle this. I just need to actually think.
mm,
And so that's one of those situations that builds a lot of character. That's like, okay, I've been in this situation. I can handle practically anything else because almost everything else is not life or death, right? Um, we had another situation on the boat one time where we were doing we were doing drills, grown men playing pretend, right? Pretending like things break so we can go fix them, right? So the only way you really actually get good at your job is doing things that could potentially happen before they do. Because
mm.
we don't like actually putting out fires, but if we know how to, it's a good thing that we have that skill first. Well, one time we're doing this drill and the boat, a submarine is neutrally buoyant sometimes, but if it's not moving, if it's not actually moving forward, then
Okay.
it can actually start to sink. Okay, so it's the motion that gets it to go up or down and things like that, but you do have buoyancy in the front or the aft, the fore, the aft. However, if you are pointed upwards like this and you don't have forward momentum, the only way you're going to go is that. And if you put too much air in it, you just do this and then you're completely done. So you can't put too much air in it, just get it to turn up, right? So you've got to have that forward momentum. Well, one time we're doing this drill and we shut down all propulsion, shut down the steam plant, everything happens. And we have an emergency motor and the guy couldn't get the emergency motor connected. So instead of us continuing to do this, we started doing this.
Oh,
And I'm watching the depth gauge go from a couple hundred feet to several hundred feet to even more several hundred feet, and we're going down fast, right? Like really fast. And the order comes on the intercom, engineering watch supervisor, emergency restore the engine room. And all of a sudden, instantly, everybody goes into high gear, and we're just getting steam coming back down the headers. Obviously, I'm here today, so we made it, right? But we were going down really, really deep, really fast, and it was not a good thing. And yet we made it through. We had a critique. We figured out what happened. What happened was we had an idiot in charge of one section that was really, really vital, and he didn't have enough training. And
yeah,
but the process still worked. And so we learned that. And again, when you encounter enough situations like that, and that was not by design, right? That wasn't by design to teach any of us how to be better sailors or deal with life's issues. But once you've gone through that, you realize, oh man, that was actually pretty close, believe it or not. We all could not be here. If it was just a few seconds longer, we may not have been. Who knows?
yeah,
Um, and so once you've gone through things like that, then you realize that all the other stuff out there is, not as difficult. And you can overcome that. And if you really, really want to achieve it, achieve something and you put your mind to it, you can make it happen, right? But you have to really want it, right?
Mm.
And so I think that's where, to answer your question, do I ever look back and go, oh man, this is totally trippy? The answer is no. I look back on it and say, oh, I'm glad I achieved that. I wish it didn't take me so long, right? Should have been able to get that done a lot faster. Like I still look at my situation today. I'm like, I should be like way further along today than I am right now. And I think that's just because I've had enough experiences in my life to know that those things are achievable. I've met the people who've achieved those things, and I still feel like I'm smarter, better prepared, whatever, but they've done it before I have. So that just puts me in the situation of no, I want to get more done. Right. Um, so that's kind of the way my mentality works in those areas.
No, I like it. I like it. The power of doing has like prepared you for the present day, and yeah, like looking on to the future. Now, I have to ask. Now, with all you've done and what you've been doing now, like what you're doing currently, like where would you like to go in the future with all of this?
I mean, the main thing that I like doing is I like working with people who are making a difference in the world, right? On a bigger, grander scale.
Mm-hmm.
And I have certain skill sets that I know how to do things that a lot of people don't know how to do. I know how to see things in a way that a lot of people don't. And so I like partnering with other business owners to help them scale their company up. And then I also like taking, money from these ventures that we do and reinvesting that back into the next generation of technology or innovation and seeing things coming to life. So it's really putting this all together in a way that perpetuates free enterprise, perpetuates capitalism, perpetuates innovation and technology, and more importantly, perpetuates all of this in a way where people can still have their individual freedoms and autonomy. So I don't believe in big government and abdicating control of our lives to the government. I really do believe in the power of the entrepreneur and the business owner. The people, they're the people that really make the economy work, in my opinion. And everybody else who, gets voted into office, if they're not helping those people out, then I think that there's something really wrong with the way the government's run. And so a lot of what I go after and I look forward to is helping those innovative people because they're the ones that are shaping the future. And I'm not the visionary. I'm not the one that's going to go out there and create the next, SpaceX or Tesla or PayPal, anything like that. The next Google. That's not me. But I can definitely help those people get to where they want to be.
Ah, you're an alchemist. Mm.
That's a way to look at it. Yeah, I like that. Mhm.
Okay, cool, cool. Now, I have to reveal, like, this is my last thing I have to reveal. Well, I haven't revealed any much, but yes, but I have to reveal I'm a being of supreme cosmic power, and I can grant you one wish. Now, before you start, because yeah, you're a smart guy, I can tell from the conversation and everything like this. You can't wish for like eternal wishes. You can't write a list out and go, yeah, make everything in this list come true. You just get one wish. And please do not ask for world peace or like to cure COVID. No, I, I have had to make pacts just to get a vaccine out there. It's not good. And not everyone was happy. Let's just leave it at that. Now, what would be your one wish?
Mm, that's a great question. And I think for me, it would be the ability to have a platform kind of like what you do right here with your podcast. So it's the ability to have a platform. And if I invited anybody in the world that I thought of, they'd they'd be obligated to come on, right? That's what it would be for me. Because there's no one person I want to hang out with, no one person I want to talk to. I want to talk to a lot of people. I want to gather knowledge from a lot of people. But it would be having that one platform where if I invited somebody, they are obligated to come and talk. That would be what mine would be.
Mhm. Yes, future podcaster or like, yeah, media star in the making, you think. Okay. Let's see what I can do about making that happen. Mm.
I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. Might take me about a couple of years, but we shall see what can be done. Now, yes, before we go, like, do you have any questions for myself?
Well, I mean, hopefully this is a good podcast, a good show, and hopefully your listeners really enjoy this. I'd say, is there anything that I can do to help you in your journeys on your day in, day out podcast here?
Hey, look, if you can, like, when the episode comes out, if you can spread the words, like the words out there, that'll be perfectly fine. That'll be exceptional. It'll be a great help. And yeah, hopefully this is the start of a beautiful friendship. And yeah, connections
That
abound.
sounds great. Well, then the next thing is if I find myself in the UK, which I probably will next year, then we're gonna have to head out to the pub or something like that and do something that is traditional English, traditional UK that's not on the tourist list. Okay, so that's the big thing. I don't want to do the touristy things.
Yep, you know what? Depends what time of year it is. If it's during the football season, yes, much alcohol will be consumed, and like yes, profanity, profound, like everywhere.
That
Like,
sounds good. I can hang with that.
no problem. Like, Jeff, thank you for coming on today. You have been a superstar. You have been a legend. You have been a delight and a pleasure. Can you tell the people where they can find you out here on these interwebs?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place to go if you're looking for me is angelinvestorsnetwork.com. That's where my main business is. That's where we help entrepreneurs grow. It's where we put our investors in rooms together and we go have our events. So angelinvestorsnetwork.com.
Perfect. Go out there, contact Jeff, have a good time, and yeah, make it so. But like Jeff, as I say, thank you for coming on today. Pleasure and honor.
I appreciate it. Meanwhile, it's been great. Great talking with you and great getting to know you and looking forward to hearing the episode.
Excellent. And I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors, for sticking with us to the end of the show. Please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world and then some. Make it great. Peace. And we are.